Oh, everyone. And the family, everyone.
Right, folks, we're going to call the meeting to order. This is the July 25th City Council meeting, Trinidad, California. And before we get to the Pledge of Allegiance, I do want to say that we are resuming from the closed session and we have nothing to report from the closed session at this time. And also you'll notice I'm leaning into my mic. We're going to ask everyone tonight to please speak into your microphones very clearly so that we can test our audio visual, because we have had some complaints and concerns. So we're going to give it a shot, the old college try. With that, let's open with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry, the flag's hiding. Sorry. Wow. I just realized.
Right, we did change our seating arrangements slightly. Decided we're going to move around a little. We might even change our tables next time. So stay tuned for that exciting development. And with that, we will start with approval of tonight's agenda. Are there any questions or comments, councilors, regarding tonight's agenda? Nope, seeing none. Are there any public comments about tonight's agenda? Yeah, about the agenda, whether we want to, we are approving, we're in the process of approving tonight's agenda. Did you
already, well, I was looking at that, did you pass over if the audience has any comments?
No, I have not gotten to that yet. We're just at the part where we're approving the flow. Okay.
I'll move that we approve the agenda. I think we got the.
All right. Is there a second?
And I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. We've approved tonight's agenda. The next up is our minutes from the June 14th, 2023 meeting. Councilors, any comments or questions about those minutes? Okay, I have reviewed them and I have no edits either. How about from the public? Are there any questions or concerns about the minutes from that meeting? This meeting is the June 13th meeting. And it should be in the packet there. And okay.
I'll move that we accept the June 14th, 2023.
And I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the minutes are approved for the June 13th meeting. So, it says June 14th, but in the cover page, I think that might be what the confusion was. And then it's actually June 13th, right? For in the packet. Dave, is that correct?
June 3rd.
Not to put too fine a point on it. Let's just, as long as we get our dates right. Thank you. No, it's no big deal. I just wanted to be clear because Carla asked the question. Okay. All right. We are at the point where we're going to talk a bit about council reports and committee assignments. I guess I'll start to my right with Mr. Ladley.
Nothing to report. I have to report.
I guess I should say Councilor Ladley, Mayor Pro Tem Ladley. I have nothing to report either. And I have nothing to report.
Gosh, pressure on me.
Yes, it is.
I decided to go visit the Dan Burn walkabout in McKinneyville last week, and I don't know much about it, but he spent the last 4 days, including his final presentations tonight. He's someone who goes around cities and talks about how you should walk about cities so for pedestrians and controlling traffic. So hear what he was saying, and we went. And one of the things he talked about are so successful and things that McKinley would be better off with a lot of roundabouts than a lot of lights. And as he talked to us next to the street, we had to all get close. We couldn't hear anything with all the noise and all the traffic racing up and down the street. So but anyway, I just thought that was interesting. His talk also let me kind of focus in Trinidad, really, there's not a lot, but one of the things I was curious about is supporting from the highway onto, yes, the hazardous area. Freeway, there's no stop sign, there's stop signs there. I talked to that and found out that there's actually been some work done on that, so it just kind of reinforcing that. That seems to me to be a potential solution to the problem there. So we'll follow up with that, Josh. Well, GAT and Caltrans have met already, to at least look. So hopefully we'll get some feedback down the road more about it.
Very cool. I saw that invitation. I'm glad someone was able to make it. Interesting.
Actually, Mayor, can I make one? So I just wanted to really extend my appreciation for how many folks, I think most everybody here was at the resiliency. So I just really want to extend appreciation. We had, I think, 15, 16 people online. The room was full. It was really wonderful just to have a lot of different folks about that. Good job at bringing everyone together, and really appreciate the work that the Watershed Council is doing. That process is garnering a lot of interest from folks. There are 3 more meetings. Encourage everybody you run into when that next meeting comes out. I can't remember when it's going to be. I want to say October, November-ish, something like that, sometime this fall. But all of us really, if we can all, kind of the whole notion, bring a friend, try to get as many people as possible. Yeah. Because it is the watershed approach that's being used for this discussion, which it includes so many of our community members from Sumag down to Little River. And so it's really bringing a much broader perspective. So it's really encouraging people to show up to that. And thank you for bringing it.
I want to add to that. There's a lot of community involved. They're not just sitting there listening. They actually are asking.
Yeah, there was a lot of
presentation.
feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are those
And thank you, counselors, for attending as well.
meetings recorded?
I think it was recorded.
Yeah.
Yes, they were.
And it's on the I think the Watershed Council posts, I want to say that your website posts the meetings or is another place where those meetings are notified, and can't remember exactly. So do you mind?
Yes.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but I just.
So the first meeting that we had, the recording is posted on the city's coastal resilience page,
Okay.
which you can find from the home page. And as soon as the recording and the notes are all ready to post, those will go on the city's website. And then we'll also post them on the Watershed Council website, which is also getting updated right now.
All right.
So, yeah, stand by.
Thank you.
And that's a good segue to the city manager's report, because I think he was going to talk about that as well.
Yeah.
And by the way, just one comment from online, request for Jack West, if you could get closer to your mic. Thank you.
Okay, so the city manager's report is in the packet. Start off talking about Pacific Coast security, and the latest update is I got an email this morning indicating that they're still working out details as far as the contract. That a schedule will be coming out. The other thing that's in here is, or rather, that's not in here, is regarding the dogs. The request was made as far as an update. So we have.
Excuse me, Yvonne.
Yes.
And so Pacific Security will start making rounds next week, is it?
Well, is putting together the schedule, he said.
That's not an actual start date then?
No, he hasn't given me an actual start date. He said, I sent the requested changes for approval. So with his legal. So they're going through that. He says, I'll check the status of that today. And then he says that he will be putting together this schedule, which I'm understanding it should be beginning. Yeah, I think it should be beginning this week.
They should actually be coming around on site this week.
That's what I'm thinking. He didn't specify. He said he was putting together the schedule. So if it's not this week, it'll definitely be next week. He just said that there was no, he had asked me the amount of time and everything. I didn't get that. Also, I had talked to the sheriff's office, and our Captain Quinnell has reported to me regarding our request to have animal control services through the county. And he said that it would be full service animal control to include enforcement of applicable laws and ordinances and investigations of violations. This would include active patrols in the area, as well as a response to calls for service. Putting together a contract that will be coming to the council this meeting. In future, beginning with 2024, it'll become part of the regular sheriff's contract that we have. So we would get a separate contract. And then I reached out to Supervisor McDrone, but I haven't gotten his response. And I just had reached out to him this morning. I was asking him how they were coming along with the ordinance. It's his work now with the sheriff's office. So that's folks. And then the chamber had a meeting last night. They do have an August mixer planned for the 23rd, which is Wednesday in August. It'll be happening next door at the Beachcomber. Then they will be having a fish fest. This is the version from last year. It's not the fish festival that used to close down the street. So the street will not be closed, but there will be things happening here at the town. Also across the street with the so on. And so it's called the Fish Fest, October 7th. So it's that first Saturday in October. Two bands playing last 3, but this year they're going to have 2. It was. And then also in the packet, Becky and Angela had prepared an extended grant activity report, which there was quite a bit of detail on the grants. And then, of course, Steve Allen is present, where we're going to be to agenda item 1 soon, which we'll cover. So if anyone has any questions, let me know.
I read through the grant update and I don't have any questions, but it's very thorough and very well done. So thank you both for that. Does anyone have any questions on the grants or the staff report?
Just to recognize that our water consumption continues to show responsible use of water in our city. So the fact that we're continuing to see numbers of gallons sold that lower every year. Just want to really sort of publicly thank everyone for thinking about what's happening in town.
Anything else? All right, we will move on now to items from the floor. And at this time, members of the public may comment on items that are not on tonight's agenda. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes or less. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole. Maintain decorum and avoid personal attacks on staff, members of the council, and or other members of the public. Council and staff responses will have to be minimal for non-agenda items. And recognizing Paula Levine at the podium.
After carefully examining the 9-page draft administrative water connection policies and criteria for evaluating connections, which I'll refer to as DAWC, and its 10-page preamble,
I have formulated a plan to simplify the DAWC that will address the concerns of all parties. If the city is truly interested in considering the points of views of their neighbors, possibly annexing our spheres of influences in the future, I hope the city will decide to accept applications to fill the vacancy in the Water Advisory Committee and allow sphere of influence residents to apply for that position. In the meantime, City Ordinance 13.04.280 related to water connections will provide a temporary solution while the request from Sphere of Influence B1 winds its way through the queue.
Thank you. Are there other public comments? Oh, okay. Sorry, I see two hands online. I apologize. We're going to take a public comment here and then we'll go online. And Diane Stockness is at the podium.
Hi, Diane Stockness, 493 View. So I have a couple items. I got to get my note out here. So I was approached by Dick Bruce from the STR committee. I think he's the chairman, that one of our community members left. And so he asked me, to be on the committee. I haven't even had a chance to call him back. I've been out of town. So I'm here tonight to ask the council, what do you want me to do? You want me to submit an application? You want me to give you some background right now? So anyway, that's my first question is, I don't know what to do because he said that we need another member and I have a lot of experience writing the ordinance and being a community member for 48 years.
Yeah, so I think the process, Eli, would be to submit an application to the city staff and copy Dick Bruce, and then we would discuss it at a council meeting.
Yeah, we can have her appointed at a council meeting.
Okay.
The other thing that I had mentioned Dick was the fact that you've been on the committee and you were the planning commission representative. At the last meeting we had, you still on the committee. So technically we could also consider changing hats since you're already on the committee and just have you as the community representative.
Okay. So it sounds like you could just switch from being the planning commission representative to representing the community.
But I'm not a planning commissioner anymore. So,
Right.
anyway, that's why I came tonight to, ask you what to do legally because, we need to keep going with this committee.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot to do, but there are a lot of STRs and a lot of choice. So.
Yeah, so go ahead and put in an application.
Okay.
With this.
Okay. So the next thing I wanted to bring up, thank you, Eli, for your report. So who responds to the Humboldt sheriff? Do they call in to Anton or do they call in to you when there's some kind of an issue?
We call them.
Oh, you call them?
There's
Okay. So on that report, what is CAD on that sheriff report?
They're asking for identification, but I don't know what the acronym actually stands for.
Yeah.
And then the sheriff's representative is unavailable at this meeting. He told me ahead.
And I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second. I'm going to get into a Brown Act situation here if we do too much back and forth. So the public comment says, sorry, Diane, we can do some of the questions offline, but the public comments are really your opportunity to speak to us.
Okay.
But we don't
Okay.
we can't necessarily answer too many questions.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay. So I just wanted to, the drone was training the the security group or public works, for the dog tickets and watching what happened to the ambassadors Okay, so the last item that I have is, I think we're in a ditch here in the city. We do not have reliable security in town, and we have a tourist destination. We need the North Coast Security Group to quit being complacent, emails, and giving us excuses. We need action.
Okay.
And I think the ambassadors, I think what Jerome said, we have to do the hard work, and that's you guys and us in the community. And these guys here are doing the hard work. We need to work with vigor. We need to have faith and hope. But I actually think we're in a ditch. That we don't have anybody circling the town.
Thank you, Diane. All right, I'm
I
going to
just
move.
wanted to, just indicate the fact that, the sheriffs have, the contract has been continued. The sheriff continues to do patrols on a regular basis in the city. And then Pacific Coast Security, we're just ironing out their contract. And as soon as that's in place, they will be providing coverage.
I do want to apologize to the community for the gap in service from the security, Pacific Coast Security. It was a challenge on contract challenge with our insurance company. We can't go into detail. We've ironed it out, and they will be back on patrol. But it was unfortunate in the summer months. I'm not happy about it that this happened. So we apologize, and we'll get that up and running again. Okay, so Mr. Marks, I believe you are up next.
Thank you, and good evening to the Trinidad City Council. My name is Richard Marks, and I am a regional compliance manager for the Construction Industry Force Account Council. We are a nonprofit organization that monitors public works projects with using public contract code. We monitor cities, counties, schools, special districts, and I have not been on the Trinidad City Council meeting in the last couple of years, and so here I am, just to check out, make sure everything's going all right, and don't want to harm business, so keep it going.
All right, excellent. Thank you for joining us. All right, Aaron Hageman, I believe you have your hand up.
I do, yeah. Hey, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. How are we doing, Aaron? Can you hear?
It's intermittent. It's spotty. The table with the problem appears to be Jack and Eli so far. Through no fault of their own, it looks like they're up at their microphone, but something about their connection cuts in and out so far. But
All right. Thanks for that specific feedback. That will help. Thank you.
Sure. Couple things. One, CAD being someone in the business, computer-aided dispatch or computer-aided documentation. My guess is that's what that means. Second point, I too have seen the sheriffs patrolling around town. So the belief that we have no police presence isn't necessarily the most accurate. I would love to see more. I don't think we have enough. I will definitely agree with that. Specifically, my item from the floor tonight, I just wanted to bring back to everybody's attention that traffic calming measures that was discussed at the last meeting are not on tonight's agenda. The minutes from the June 13th meeting do a phenomenal job of encapsulating the discussion, including a summary of the takeaway made by Mayor Kelly at the end. And as I see, according to those minutes that you approved tonight, action items from the council to the city manager and staff were: 1, the city manager was directed to ask the engineer to review options for Underwood speed hump placement, because that was missed in the first round. 2, it was directed that the more temporary style speed hump information be shared with the city engineer for evaluation. So I'm curious if there are any updates on those items available tonight, or at least they'll be addressed at the August meeting. And then the third thing, it was opined that residents be able to provide input on possible changes, such as speed humps. And I'd just like to respectfully suggest that this is exactly that process, the agendizing and discussion that happens. And I hope that that was the intent behind that comment. And I don't particularly think there's a need to create a different process or a different bar to be met in this instance. I don't recall one, for example, being set in place for the stop signs at, Edwards and Trinity there. So I'm hopeful that it will return next month so that a decision can be made by the council as to how you would like to proceed. that your decision direction can be implemented by the city manager, because this problem continues to go on, and it was on the agenda and now it's fallen off. And I just am going to be here respectfully reminding you to please act on it. Thanks.
Thank you. And yes, keep us accountable. One of the things we discussed recently was in the manager's report, city manager report, we would keep ongoing subjects on the city manager report so that everybody's aware of the updates, and also post those on the website. So we will try to update on some of these, because there's often things in the works, and we're probably not doing the best job at communicating those. So thanks for keeping us honest on that, Aaron. Other public comments? And since I said we're not going to go back and forth, do you want to comment about the traffic calming, or should we go ahead and post that in a?
Yeah, we can have it at an upcoming meeting. I want to get the input from Josh regarding those couple questions.
Okay.
I thought that he would be responding to us, so
Okay.
I'll specify to him response on those.
And the HSIP, the crosswalks, is that what it's called, HSIP?
Yeah, well, that we have included
That's
in
kinda-
in my staff report. I did mention. Oh no, it's actually. I had it in the staff report, and then I took it out because it's actually in the grants report. So let me turn to that page from the grants report.
Yeah, and I know it's been, because we didn't get the Caltrans funding, I believe we've pushed that out to the spring of 2024
Yeah,
for
exactly.
the crosswalk part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what it says in the grants report is, the CEQA categorical exemption is completed and filed, and permits and right-of-way clearances have been obtained. Project plans and specifications have been completed. Staff submitted a request to Caltrans in May for allocation of the construction phase funding, which is in the queue for Caltrans approval. Because of the delay, we have missed the window to advertise for bids and proceed to the construction phase this year, prior to the rainy season. Once construction funding is approved by Caltrans, we will decide when to advertise for bids, but construction will occur in 2024 during the dry season.
Okay, so that's for that project. And then the speed humps and so forth, we'll talk about in a future meeting, because that would need to be agendized, so. All right, we are on the consent agenda, so I'll ask counselors if you have any questions or comments on the consent agenda for tonight's meeting. Seeing none, I will go to the public. Are there any questions or comments about tonight's consent agenda? All right, back to the council. Would anyone
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so tonight's consent agenda is approved, and that will move us into the discussion and action items for the city council meeting this evening. The first is the discussion presentation regarding water storage tank and pipeline replacement project update. And Eli, are you going to cover that for us?
Yeah, we actually do have Steve Allen, and he has a PowerPoint presentation
Okay.
regarding this, so he can give us the full engineer's update on the project.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Excellent. So this is going to be an overview, an update on this project. It's a water tank and pipeline replacement project. If you could go to the next slide, please. So talk about the summary of the project, what it entails, some details about the water tank replacement itself, and likewise the water line replacement, and then also the schedule. You can go to the next slide, please. Excuse me. So this is funded through the DWR, Department of Water Resources, and includes the replacement of leaky asbestos cement pipes, the old AC water mains that were very common on West Haven Drive, Edwards and then Van Wyck, and then also replacing one of the aging existing 150,000 gallon redwood water storage tanks with a new 250,000 gallon steel water storage tank. The project will help reduce loss of water through leaking pipes and also helps increase the storage amount. And the grant covers everything from the design, environmental compliance, and construction of the above items. And we're expecting to commence construction a little bit later this summer, which we'll go into more detail. If you could go to the next slide, please. So the tank site, where the city's 2 existing water tanks are located, will replace one of the existing tanks with a new 250,000 gallon stainless steel water storage tank. This differs slightly from previous presentation and overview. Previously, the original plan was to replace it with a 300,000 gallon tank. And the reason that the tank size has been slightly reduced has to do mainly with escalation of prices. We had one vendor tell us that the cost of material for a steel water tank had gone up 40% in a short amount of time. So as we're going through the design and updating the estimates that we're getting from vendors and manufacturers, we're double checking that our project is seemingly based on the engineer's estimate within the grant budget. And it turns out that everything that we were hoping to do when we wrote the grant is now a bit more expensive. So we met with the grant manager to inquire whether or not there was some additional funding available in order to deliver everything. Sometimes there are more funds available, so it never hurts to ask. Unfortunately, the grant manager was clear that for this particular grant in this particular project that there was no more funding available. So basically, city was given direction to slightly modify the scope as needed in order to fit within the available grant budget. So we went through and looked at options for the size of the tank being one option to change. And we went through and evaluated fire flows and found that a 250,000 gallon tank was still going to be more than adequate to meet fire demands and still increase the storage, the city's existing system. And also speaking with Coleman Engineering, current operator at the water plant, they were having some concerns about potentially increasing to a 300,000 gallon tank because the long-term goal, regardless of what tank we replace now, that when the second aging redwood water tank needs replacement, that we would use the same size and type of tank. So everyone felt that it was better to actually go with the 250,000 gallon tank. And the stainless steel selection was based on a whole tank selection memo and analysis that we completed and discussed with city staff and also discussed with the grant funder. And so the stainless steel has the advantage of having extremely low maintenance costs compared to some other options. And so that should serve the city well for decades to come. The project will also include improvements to the tank access road, which is currently, there's some gravel, but it's predominantly just dirt. And during the wintertime, it gets very muddy and it's difficult to access. And then on West Haven Drive, just off of the tank site access road, we'll still be replacing approximately a little over 1,300 feet of the existing 8-inch diameter AC water main from Taypaw Lane towards the treatment plant. And then we're replacing and upgrading the size from an 8-inch to a 10-inch from Taypaw Lane to the water tanks. And that was based on going through and updating the hydraulic water model that we have for the water system, and also looking at some of the entire loop system for the city, looking at fire flow pressures, et cetera. And that particular section of pipe was a bit undersized. So that was something that we had intended to do during the grant application, was upsize that pipe. But we wanted to verify that with the hydraulic model as we're going through the design and trying to take a closer look at cost. So we're still upgrading the size of the line in that area and with the new PVC pipe. If you go to the next slide, please. So the water tank replacement is just replacing one of the tanks. It turns out to be the tank on the right, which you can't really see in this particular picture, but we'll show you a little more detailed picture in a moment. Basically, we're replacing the tank in the greatest need. One of them is aging more than the other. And the plan, as I mentioned before, is for eventual replacement of the second tank with a larger tank. So as we're going through and designing this project, we're trying to look forward, planning out for the future to make sure that we have adequate space and size, and that the size tank that we're selecting now, the type and size of tank, will be appropriate for the second tank. So we are planning for eventual replacement of the second tank. That's not an imminent need, but clearly it is already aging and will continue to age and at some point need to be replaced. And then we're also trying to improve access around the tank. So it's fairly narrow up there. I mean, it's fine for public works to get around in their small pickup, but there's not really much room for anything much more than a smaller pickup. And so for construction access and just general maintenance, we're trying to improve the access around the tanks as we're doing the project. Go to the next slide, please. These are some photos of the aging tank, the one that was on the right in the previous photo. So the redwood itself is not necessarily doing too bad, but the steel bands that actually hold everything together are degrading. So these appear to be PVC coated steel bands, and the PVC coating is coming off, and you can see some of the steel bands have some pretty serious corrosion going on. So the strength of those bands is diminishing rapidly and is much worse shape than the other water tank. Seems to be a lot better shape, both in regards to the redwood as well as the structural steel bands. You go to the next slide, please. These are just a couple pictures of the access road. So there's a couple issues. One, I mentioned just the lack of gravel and generally being a dirt road, and the drainage is not really ideal. So in the wintertime, it becomes very muddy and difficult to access. Obviously, public works should have access to the water tanks all year round. Technically, they do. It's just not ideal. So as part of the project, we will be adding gravel and resurfacing and improving the drainage along the roadway. The second item shown on the picture on the left is that there are some pretty narrow sections of the roadway, and that's partially confined by available easement that the city has on the property. But then also the second growth trees have been growing up, and the road was fairly narrow and had some tight turns, which makes it difficult, again, especially for construction access and some of the larger vehicles. So there are some trees that are proposed to be removed, but both at the tank site and some along the access road as well. And next slide, please. So the project, that's the tank site and along West Haven Drive. There's a separate portion of the project in the city, which was also part of the original grant. And this is the Edward Street area. And so the part of this project, again, all dealing with the water system, is to address the temporary water line that we have across the Van Wyck Trail at this particular point. So that was after we had a slide in the trail that was taking out some of the water line. We needed to turn that off to make sure that we weren't losing water and nor adding water down onto an active slide area. So right now we have a temporary line that's on the surface of the ground, keeping that loop section in place. So the longer term solution is to basically abandon the water line along that unstable area of Van Wyck Street across the trail. And again, based on the water model and analysis, we found that if we replace the 4-inch pipe that's going down Edward Street, essentially between Hector and Galindo, and upgrade that to an 8-inch, then the fire hydrant that's on the lower area of Van Wyck and the hydrants and the rest of the water system that goes all the way down into the harbor parking lot would be adequately served, both in pressure and volume. So we're replacing approximately 365 feet of the new 6-inch diameter on Van Wyck Street. So there's the aging AC pipe that was going down Van Wyck Street, and we're going to replace that and put a new hydrant down at the end of the eastern side of Van Wyck Trail. And then we'll, as part of the project, remove the temporary water line that's going across the slide area. Next slide, please. And this is a picture when it was installed, which was, I forget how many years ago now that we installed that. There's 2 lines you see there. One of them is the water line that we were just discussing. The second line is a stormwater line, because there is a section of stormwater, that gravity drain that comes down across that area. And that'll be addressed as part of a separate project. Next slide, please. So the schedule, we had finished all the field investigations. I do see a typo on top. It wasn't June 2033. That's a little far out, but we have completed that work. CEQA was completed in March. The 60%, 90% designs are already complete. The 100% designs are just being finished up. They're going through the final quality reviews at this point. And the public bidding will start in late July or early August, with construction expected to start a little bit later this fall, and will go into 2024. And if you can go to the next slide. I believe that is the last slide. So I will stop there and happy to try to answer any questions if there may be any.
Right. Thank you very much, Steve. Are there any questions for Steve, councilors?
I just had one question for you, Steve. I just didn't catch. When the second tank is replaced, you said that will also be a larger tank. Will it be 250,000 gallons, or is that mostly going to be price dependent when the time comes?
Good question. And the intent is to, when the time comes and funding's available to replace the second aging tank, that it would be replaced with the same size and same material tank that we're going to replace the tank with now. So there's a benefit on the height of tanks and how the hydraulics work, and also just the maintenance of the tanks of having similar size and similar material tanks. So that's how we're proceeding with this project, with that intent, but the city is not locked into that decision. We're just trying to plan ahead.
Thank you.
What's the lifetime of a stainless steel tank?
So another good question. A lot of the manufacturers we talk to and a lot of the examples we've seen from other stainless steel tanks is more in the neighborhood of 80 years, which the manufacturer may not go on record of saying 80 years exactly. But for reference, a redwood tank is not going to last nearly that long. Looking at other options of steel tanks, such as epoxy coated steel or glass fused steel tanks, those have a anticipated replacement schedule of more on the neighborhood of 40 years. And maybe they would last 50 years, or maybe they last a little bit less. That order of magnitude, a lot of the other steel tanks, especially in coastal access, are more expected to be replaced around every 40 years, and a stainless steel tank could last twice that long.
Steve, is there any concern for trees falling on these tanks to them in the future? Or do we have a good?
Yeah, I'll try to answer that. The question was breaking up a little bit, but I did hear whether there was a concern about trees falling on tanks, and I would say yes. There's certainly not a desire to have a tree fall on a tank. I did hear from Coleman Engineering when there was a break in the water line months ago on Scenic Drive, and you got the automated alarm that the water level was dropping so fast he had actually wondered if a tree did fall on the tank. So that I would say that yes, there certainly is a concern. I do believe that a steel tank would fare much better if a tree fell on them than a wooden redwood tank, but it's still not recommended either way. That is part of the goal of removing and some of the trees up in that area and providing more room around the tanks. Obviously, fire is another concern. So even if a tree is not falling, I'm trying not to have a fire danger so close to the tanks. Again, steel tank would generally do better in a fire situation than wooden tanks would, and having more buffer around the tanks from the trees would also be helpful. The city, I will say, does not own a large amount of land around the tanks, so it is not like that we had carte blanche to try to get a 150-foot clear space, as CAL FIRE and others would often recommend around homes. But we did have the opportunity to remove some trees, both from a fire perspective and also just from a danger of limbs or trees potentially falling.
All right, are there any public comments or questions for Mr. Allen? Please come to the podium, Paula.
I was wondering if anybody investigated the possibility of replacing the steel bands if the redwood is not in too bad of a shape. Perhaps we could save the tank and add the new tank, and that would give us an extra 150,000 gallons of water if it's possible to salvage the older tank by replacing the steel bands.
Do you hear that question, Steve?
Yes, good question, and I'll try to answer it. We did consider it, I would say briefly. I would say that it's not it used to be, redwood tanks used to be much more common, right? They're used for decades and well over a century. And so production of redwood tanks, refurbishing redwood tanks used to be much more common. It is not as common anymore in our experience. There's still a lot of redwood tanks, of course, on the North Coast and elsewhere, but refurbishing them is not as common. With some of the fire dangers and things that I mentioned, wood tanks are not necessarily ideal. And as everyone probably knows, the quality of redwood has, diminished since redwood tanks first started being used when we were logging old growth, and there was a lot of incredible heartwood that would last a long, long time. And while the redwood itself is on the existing current tank does not seem to be the limiting factor, it's also not in the best shape. So there are some areas where it's leaking, and it's I don't recall how many years ago exactly. I believe it was 30 years ago. Don't quote me on that, but just order of magnitude. It wasn't too long ago that the tanks were replaced. And so it was not old growth redwood. So the redwood is not as great a shape as it was, and the kind of the business of trying to refurbish those tanks is not as common. So we did put into the grant to replace with a steel tank for those reasons. So as part of the grant project, at least, we did not go through a detailed investigation of trying to save the tank. I hope that answers your question.
It's actually the
Newer tank that's being replaced, is that correct?
That is what I understand, yes. And I do believe that that's part of the issue with the quality, not only of the wood, but also the galvanizing metal. The old steel bands appear to be galvanized, and the newer bands on the newer tank appeared to be that PVC coated material that did not fare as well. And again, we're obviously in a coastal environment, so it's a little bit more harsh, and corrosion is pretty common. But yes, my understanding is it is the newer tank that is not faring as well. That is the one we're replacing based on its current condition.
Did you speak with any local machine shops about the possibility of replacing the bands?
No, I cannot say that we did.
Is there a possibility that might be useful at this point?
I don't believe so. As part of this grant project, the tank appears to be having some leaks and issues beyond just the steel bands, and the grant was written to replace it with a steel tank. So I think your thought process and comment is good, and I think it's something that may be more applicable on the older tank as we move ahead. But there are some advantages of switching over to a steel tank and a larger tank size as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other questions for Mr. Allen? For the public?
All right, seeing none, I will bring it back to the city council. I have a question that I think is more towards the staff recommendation. So I think the staff recommendation in this case, the first one was to authorize the city manager to continue to deliver the project per the grant agreements, including soliciting and accepting or rejecting all bids and awarding the construction contract to the lowest responsive bidder. And so my question was whether or not the city has established a procurement process. I know the state has one. Maybe we're using that one. That one's pretty complicated, I think. But is there
I'm going to have Becky to answer that because she helps oversee the procurement process.
So this is a common type of contracting process that GHC is good at and is handling, and I'm confident that they're doing this in accordance with both the requirements from the state, but also that meets the grant. So, and we also have had the contract and the specification. It's also manager. So they've been vetted a number of ways.
And if I could just, I remember, I don't know, the last 6 or 8 months, the council has sort of reapprove the regular process. I think it's every 3 years. We have a list of qualified contractors who can submit bids to the city, right? We have a process sort of baked in where the city has like all of the rules established,
Pre-approved vendors.
pre-existing kind of set up, so we don't have to vet everybody every time.
So that's, that was correct 3 years ago or more. That was put in place when we were, we had a grant to replace, septic systems on other people's property. And it was too cumbersome to go to try and do 13 projects with, going out to bid each time. And so there's a process where you can advertise for just what you said, a pool of bidders. And so they basically qualify at that time. And then we just send out an email to those and they send their proposals response and then we can select them from that. So it's a different, for these large construction projects, we would always want it a standalone advertisement or solicitation for bids. I think there would be a benefit to the city to have, if we had a lot of projects that weren't large and funded by the grants, it might be beneficial to, you have to renew that every year. So it's a lot of work. So
Got it.
that's why we haven't done it again for, for a while. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Becky.
Aaron. Oh, Aaron, did you have a question or comment?
I had, I guess, just a question, but it was more for the staff report in general, not for Steve Allen. Is now the appropriate time for that?
Sure, related to this topic?
Absolutely, yeah, to this agenda item.
Okay, yes.
As I recall, there was first of all, I'm really pleased with the updated plan, trying to work within the means that were forced on us by the economy. So thanks everybody, a lot of great hard work there. And I'm really excited to see the contract with, I believe it was Able Forestry Consultants for evaluation of the timber that's scheduled to be removed and cut down. I believe, as my recollection is, there was a good deal of conversation about the concept of salvage value in the old tank itself. And I don't see that addressed anywhere in the staff report, nor in the contract for services with Able Forestry. So I don't know if I've forgotten something that I need to be refreshed on or just wanted to bring that up. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'll let Steve Allen answer that because it was addressed.
Yeah, good question. That was discussed internally amongst staff, so I guess it did not get included in staff report per se. Essentially, we did not engage Able Forestry to do that. They're more looking at standing timber and commercial prices. But the general question that came up last time, from my recollection, was regarding whether or not the value of the redwood in existing tanks has been considered, because there is an inherent value there. And the direction that staff elected to take was based on the fact that, sorry, just a little feedback or something on my end here, but when we discuss that internally, is yes, there is value in that wood. The question is, how do we set up the contract documents to utilize or benefit from that? And so this project is really set up for the water system, and primarily, obviously, to replace the tank and replace as much pipes as we can. And so we felt that if we tried to go down the road of forcing the value or trying to recoup the cost of the redwood, or to use the benefit of the value of the redwood, that we may be missing out on the public bidding benefit of the public bidding process, which one contractor may absolutely want to take the time and slow down and pull all the bands off and reuse that redwood or try to sell it. And another contractor may come in and say, I'm not going to spend that time and energy, and I'm going to give you a much cheaper bid because I'm going to come in and I'm going to have a large excavator and I'm going to have all that material out of there in, whatever, a day, 2 days, 3 days, and they're going to move on. So we essentially left it up to the contractor with the intent that many contractors may very well take the time and reuse that wood, but we're going to get the lowest bid price without trying to require additional things that happen with that tank. And if a contractor is going to give the city a lower cost for demolition, whether that's by removing the material faster or because they feel they're going to make up that money on reselling the wood, then the net result to the city is they're going to have a lower bid item for that price, and we're going to put more money towards replacing more pipes. So we did consider it, but we did not want to actively try to restrict the contractor's approach to how they bid the project.
Okay, thank you very much for the update.
Mr. Marks, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, again, this is Richard Marks from the Construction Industry Force Account Council. And I think I've recommended this in the past for the city of Trinidad. The city of Trinidad is a general law city, and the force account limit for them is $5,000. If there is a chance for them to consider it, maybe in a future date, to put the California Uniform Construction Cost Accounting Act, which is KUCA, consider that from the state controller's office. It would raise your limits to $60,000 and then informal bids to $200,000. It's just something maybe you could think about for the future for your bidding process. A lot of different smaller cities have that.
Excellent. Thank you for that input. We have a couple of folks in the room who are nodding their heads, so they appreciate that information. Yes, Paula, did you want to add a public comment?
Before I go on, were you done, Mr. Marks? Was that?
Yes.
You get it?
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
I just want to make sure I didn't cut him off.
Not knowing what process the different contractors may use to get rid of the tank, because they use a bulldozer or what. I was wondering if there was some way that perhaps we could communicate with the local workers.
Yeah.
Workers guild.
I know what you meant.
To potentially salvage the redwood from the tank. And the tank is drained before the contractor comes in. If there's not a contractor offering a reasonably
low bid to disassemble the wood, whether they want to keep it or sell it or whatever. If once the tank is drained, if an independent
entity, for example,
someone from the Woodworkers Guild would want to come in and disassemble it, if that's part of the contract cost from whatever contractor, it would save the city a few dollars, and a guild member would be able to salvage the wood.
All right, thank you for that suggestion. You probably heard that, so we'll take that under advisement. Unless Steve, you had a comment.
I appreciate the effort to reuse the wood. I'm a woodworker myself. So I had the same desire to try to reuse the wood. The challenge contractually of trying to do that is the work site will be an active work site. It's very likely that the schedule of work will include replacing the water lines and things up to the tank area well before the tank is ever demolished. And we obviously want to diminish the amount of time that the water tank is out of commission. So we're going to be pushing the contractor to try to minimize the amount of time that the tank is down and out of commission. And so I would just say it would be very challenging to try to allow another entity to come in, whether they're volunteers or another company on an active work site, and to try to remove the wood. So I appreciate the sentiment, and it's just challenging contractually to try to pull that off.
Right, thank you. I see no other public comments at this time, so I'm going to bring this back to the council. Actually, we kind of did go a little bit back and forth. So back to the council. I spent quite a bit of time on this with the Water Advisory Committee, and actually kind of drafted the water storage tank recommendation. So I'm a big fan of moving to the stainless steel tank. And the Water Advisory Committee actually advised this. So I appreciate the staff going and getting the grants and making this happen. There was a lot of discussion about wildfire resilience and the fact that we needed stainless for that, more water storage for droughts. We had the 2 tanks. One of them was the newer of the 2, but both of them were very old and nearing end of life when we looked at it. So we felt like we were going to have a major failure if we didn't replace it. So I would move to approve the staff recommendations here and authorize the city manager to deliver the bid projects and to work with the professional forester to inventory trees and pay for the trees and move forward. So move.
1 second.
All right. Any other? All those in favor? Aye. All right, so that passes unanimously. And next up, we have 2 items, item number 2 and item number 3, that we're actually going to be continuing to the August City Council meeting.
And we do have Trevor on.
Trevor, did you want to say anything about that before we move to continue, or get public comments, et cetera?
Yeah, I put it on the agenda as I noted in the staff report because I had noticed the zoning ordinance amendment a number of weeks ago for this meeting. So yeah, it would be good to open up public comment in case someone's interested, but just a little bit of quick background. We've been working on some zoning ordinance amendments and have found it a bit unwieldy to work with the city's codified ordinances versus the Coastal Commission's certified version of the zoning ordinance. And so we've been working to bring the two into, look at the differences between the two and bring them together and get the codified version certified. And we've had, it's been more complicated than we expected. We expected to just be changing the numbering basically. But there's been a number of amendments over the years. And then what happened with the certification in the 1980s and we're missing a couple of ordinances. So we're still working through a few issues with Coastal Commission staff to make sure what we've got codified is certifiable by the Coastal Commission, so that we can use that numbering system. So I think we're very close. I've got a meeting with Coastal Commission staff next week. Hopefully we can kind of finalize things, and I will have these ordinances on the next agenda for you.
Are there any questions from the council? Any questions from the public? All right, seeing none, then I would bring it back to the council, and I'll go ahead and move to discuss these agenda items 2 and 3 in the August council meeting.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Trevor. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
your help, and we'll look forward to discussing that next month.
All right.
All right, Trevor, before you leave, just so you'll know, we do have the last agenda item is to discuss the August meeting, which it's very likely that the August meeting will be the second meeting of the month, which would be the 22nd. So just as a heads up.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the city manager's contract renewal. And this is actually, we conducted the city manager's review, as always, in a closed session earlier this evening. And of course, nothing to report. Those are private discussions. The item before us is to approve the employment agreement for an existing year. And so I'm going to go ahead. I don't know, Eli, if you want to say anything before the council discusses, or.
Yeah, no, it's
typical.
Yeah, I mean, whatever, the council comes up with will be fine for.
Okay. Any questions, discussion, council, that you would like to enter into, or would you like me to
I'm actually curious if we can get some public, since the council's already had our discussion.
Good point.
During the closed session, if we could kind of move right.
Yes, everyone agree?
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
All right, let's open to any public comment.
Hi, Diane. Okay, so I believe the city manager should work 5 days a week. 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We're a busy city and he needs to be here to deal with the community members and the daily issues. The assistant, the deputy assistant, Jennifer, and the city clerk assistants could start at 9. The 4-day city manager contract started years ago. And we are now a very busy city with STRs, tourists, weekend people, fishing people, homeless, not a secure security group for our safety, no steady law enforcement. So there's just so much going on the weekends that I just really think a 10 to 4, 5 day a week thing, you know. With COVID, everybody started working at home a little bit, and I don't know. I just think 5 days is what we need here because we are, you know, a really busy city. And these guys are doing what they can do. And I also talked to the city clerk about coming in on Mondays and Fridays because I said, we need someone in there beside the deputy assistant city clerk answering questions. People come in and out of that office all the time. I like Eli. I think, you know, things are going fine, but we need a 5-person to manage this city. It's busy, real busy. Go to the parking, go to the beach, go through the city.
Been a very, very busy summer. Diane, just to clarify, one of your comments was the deputy clerk coming in at 9, and I believe he does come.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So if the city manager came and worked 10 to 4.
I see.
5 days a week. It's an idea. You know, back in the day when Suker and the one before her, I mean, I've been through probably 10 city managers, and back in the day, we weren't a busy tourist city with all these SDRs and what's going on everywhere. And there were 300 kids at the school or more. Now there's not, but the way the traffic goes until we get the speed bumps and the yellow lines, we need some more eyes. City. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I just want to make sure I understood. Are there other public comments regarding the renewal of the city manager contract? All right. I would hope to get more comments, and I think Mayor Pro Tem Lively had a good suggestion. Hopefully, we'll get more in the future. We don't have it's summertime, so we get less attendance to our meetings, I guess. So bringing it back to the council, I guess I have some concerns about approving the renewal tonight. I've been working on a process as mayor for the last 6 months, doing some 360 evaluation, getting some feedback from staff and I'd like to get a little bit more from the community as Steve had recommended tonight, but I guess my recommendation, I'm personally not comfortable approving the contract tonight and would most likely move for a continuance to the August meeting to allow me a little more time. But I want to open it up to the other councilors and what their thoughts are. So let's do that.
Let me ask if you were to, what would that do in terms of his salary? Because he's already, Joe, how do you want to work that?
Yeah, so my understanding is that we would continue under the existing contract, extending it and including the 4% increase that was approved. So we would then continue to the August meeting and have a discussion at that point of the term of the agreement.
And are you, in your mind, thinking that discussion about what you're kind of leaning towards, or I'm just curious, sort of on a practical level.
Yeah, from a process perspective.
Yeah, process.
I mean, it could potentially be it could be in the consent, so it would have to be agendized again, I believe. I don't think it can be in the consent agenda. And I think the discussion would be the term of the agreement, potentially renewal. And again, this is a democracy, so there are 5 of us here, and you may all say you would like to approve the contract this evening, and if so, then that's democracy rules. I would just like to continue to August for a little more time. So I'm going to leave it there, and please continue to discuss.
I'm going to support that, because what I'm hearing and what I was also kind of hoping for was a little bit more public input. And so perhaps with this next month, we can all seek a little more public input. And I think if I could, just my only perspective, is what I'm hearing is that there's a lot more activity, right? Diane just shared that, and I think we can all experience that there's a lot more activity going on in the city. We have a lot more staff compared to previous years. So I think there is some room for a realignment of our staff expectations, of our city handbook, city employee handbook, and things like that. So perhaps we can use this next month as recommend to just get enough input so that we have as much information as we need to make sure that the city manager position and its expectations are clear to Eli or any incumbent that's in the position. As our city is evolving, our city has evolved considerably in the 6 years I've been on council. I don't believe that our expectations have evolved with that in terms of making sure that any employee should only be evaluated on the expectations that they were given when they got the job. I think those, especially, right, the COVID, the water situation, all these changes have been very significant. The number of grants that we're administering right now has so thank you, by the way, but it's also a lot of work that we need to accommodate. So
yeah,
I support your recommendation that we all come together in August. Just our perspectives on how to make sure that city manager position is meeting the needs of the city. And, I wasn't here at the time, but at one time, it was the city council who was doing all the work of the city manager. That's not a realistic model for our particular situations, but let's make sure that we're being clear on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the onus is on the city council with more input from the community to help establish and set priorities. So that's really good.
I'm in accord with your suggestion as well. I have spoken to a few people, citizens, I guess, who couldn't be here tonight. So perhaps in August they could join us. And in August, would we also be talking about more specificity in terms of
I think we can talk about, setting kind of what are the priorities that the city council is helping to set for the city manager? Because, one of the things we've discussed, and this is not related to any specific evaluative or evaluation, but we've discussed as a council that we need to take a more active role in establishing the priorities for the city and helping and supporting the city manager in his leadership for the city. And so I think, yes, to answer your question, Katie, I think we could maybe, list out the 4 or 5 things that we would like, that the council is suggesting that the city manager really focus on, and then get input from both the staff who are members and the community.
that would help me a lot. Okay, in my decision.
Okay.
Much more to say. I agree too.
All right, so I guess I will move to continue this discussion to the August meeting with the understanding that the council will discuss at that time kind of a prioritization of focus areas for city management.
Looks like
All those in favor? Aye. So moved. Thank you. And thank you, Eli, for your patience as we work through our process.
Yeah, thank you. And just to be clear, as I understand it, we're approving the 4% all other staff got effective immediately, actually effective July 1. And contract, you know. I just want to make sure that.
Absolutely. That's exactly what we're saying. Thank you for clarifying that. All right. I think the last discussion on tonight's agenda is the August council meeting schedule. So Eli, I think you, or Jack?
Yeah. I can weigh in. I know Jack had told me he was not going to be available for the regular council meeting on the 8th. The 8th is actually only 2 weeks away from today. So I asked the council members, and it appears that everyone is available for the 2nd. So basically, it seems logical to have it on the 22nd. And then from the 22nd to the regular council meeting in September would be 3 weeks. So it would seem to make sense to, do a 3-week spread rather than a 2-week spread.
Right, everybody okay with that? With the 22nd? Okay.
I did want to note also that Jack Tuttle told me that is unavailable for the regular first meeting in September. So in case the council wants to take that into consideration, but otherwise August seems to.
Okay. Do you want to decide the September meeting date tonight? Should we go ahead and do that or do that in the next meeting? Does anyone have a preference or?
I'm okay with sticking with the regular schedule. I mean, all of us generally take 1 or 2 meetings off a year for work or family vacation.
I am as well.
Yeah.
Everyone else? Okay.
As much as I'll miss Jack,
Yeah.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yeah.
I think it's okay for me.
No. Okay, so August 22nd is, and then I will go to public comments. Are there any members of the public who would have a comment about us during the meeting August 22nd? All right, I see no public comments. So they're booked for August 22nd and a regularly scheduled meeting in September. Any future agenda items, city councilors?
Just a traffic comment. I think, giving Josh a little nudge might sure get the answer.
Thank you. Yeah, Aaron will appreciate that.
He left. Oh, no, he didn't.
He's not there anymore, but we'll call him. Oh, yes. Yes.
He's having a son.
Yeah, and I'm going to go to public next. So, and I may have been what he was going to say. Any other future agendas?
I had asked Eli for an update on the dog situation. And I think Jennifer had a whole plan that she was going to put forth. I just don't know what's happened with that. So I don't know if it needs a whole discussion item, but I don't know where else to put it.
Yeah. So Eli mentioned a couple of things about it, but maybe it does deserve a future agenda item to talk about the animal control piece, the new ordinance when it comes out, and the campaign. Might be September, not August, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, we need to get more input from the county as to where they're at with the process.
Yeah.
And ideally, we can have the animal control contract and eventually it's to be considered by the council. Then after that, we can do some kind of a program to help promote.
And also, as Anne was mentioning the ticketing as well.
I'm just not sure why we need to wait on a program about getting your dogs licensed and keeping them leashed and, dog safety. And
if we just focus on that, I was thinking that we could also be promoting what the ordinance is and how the whole process is so that people are aware of some of the changes we've done beyond just asking them to do the licensing and so on.
Maybe we should connect with Jennifer and see if there's a campaign that, we can put together and discuss, because there was something that was talked about for July or August. And I think I can't remember if we were waiting for the ordinance, but I don't think the two are.
We were talking about how, the line between coming to Trinidad and walking on the beach
Right.
and walking at Moonstone is insignificant to the dog walker as they go both back and forth. And that's why the county involvement was so important, so that we were able to say with the definitive, information. And when you're on Trinidad property, these are the rules. But realize that across the road, it's county and these are the rules there, and just be aware.
Yeah, getting the ordinances aligned is important.
Yeah, I mean, it would be awesome. It would be, I think, efficient to have that aligned, but at least if we're going to do a public campaign, I think folks would get pretty easily just, I don't know, confused by, oh, that's right. That's, no one knows where the city limits are, right? So they're walking their dog, they cross the street, they're in county, it's a different set of rules. We just want everyone to know this is what's going on when you walk your dog. Again, so taking this watershed approach anywhere up here, right? A lot of folks drive up, am I going to hit Moonstone today or State Beach? They're not thinking, well, one's county and those rules apply, right? So we just want to be able to, I think, be super, super, super clear.
Yeah.
And
So,
state parks, I don't know, we need to get them. If we're going to do a public campaign, let's do it for the.
Yeah.
Understand. The state parks, it could be, that was posted there. The person in charge of trails for the state parks and trails, get just that kind of. Well, I'll have it here as soon as I get the meeting down.
okay. Well, given the amount of discussion, it does seem like this is an interesting topic. So maybe we put it on the September agenda as kind of a forcing function, because the one thing I do get concerned about is that the county ordinance takes, a couple of years or something.
Yeah.
If it's imminent, then, that'll really help. Plus I have
Supervisor Madrone said he was actively working, but again, active for the county may take longer.
Well, but you're right. Yeah, it sounded like it might be imminent, so we should check. Maybe we can check with Supervisor Madrone. Time is of the essence because I have a 3-month-old Bernese mountain dog that would make a perfect poster child. Just
That's a conflict. You'll make money.
Counselor Joe.
Yeah, I'd like to just ask staff to PG projects, start the process to underground the power lines in town. Costs to underground view, Underwood, and then once cost, then we direct our grant writers to look for specific grants that could fund those projects. So the first thing we need to do is find the cost.
That's really good. Yeah, good one. We've discussed that a few times, and someone sent me an email about that today.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing that up. All right, a public suggestions for future agenda items. I think, Erin, I thought I saw Erin's hand, but it's not there. Paula's in the room. She's got her hand raised, so we'll go to Paula.
There is a very large community issue, city issue, and soy issue looming in the horizon, in the queue. And I just want to briefly reiterate what I said at the beginning of this meeting, because this issue relates to the looming water issues. We're going on 2 years when the city decided to explore the Luffin Falls for Humboldt Bay municipal water. And during that time, according to the current financial report, there has been a tremendous amount of funds that were unexpected that had to be spent on the Luffin Falls water plant. Exploration of developing the upper Luffin Falls, so cost tens of thousands of dollars. It did not pan out. So going on 2 years ago, it was decided by the council and the manager to review the decision that the council made a couple of years ago. And this will involve very complex work and research that will involve a careful financial analysis of the cost of running the Luffenhall system compared to obtaining water from Humboldt Bay. It will involve answering very complicated questions that polarized the community 2 years ago. In my perspective, the introduction of this whole business that took place 2 years ago, lacking in a lot of background research and data. In any event, the city chose a path. The city said at that time it would be reevaluated. And I think this could be work that the Water Advisory Committee could do. And I'll just repeat in case you missed it. If the city is truly interested in considering the points of views of their neighbors and possibly annexing our spheres of influence in the future, I hope the city will decide to accept applications to fill a vacancy in the Water Advisory Committee and allow Troy residents to apply. So I'd like that to be on the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Paula. And I do want to say that the Water Advisory Committee is, when we have a vacancy, we don't have right now, but my understanding is that it's anyone who is a water customer.
Right.
So that would include outside the city limits. So if you're a water customer, you can apply to the Water Advisory Committee, to be on the Water Advisory Committee. It's just we don't have an opening at the moment. It's fully staffed, but fully volunteer. Well, it's the way the resolution is written. We have, but we can talk offline. I'll show you the resolution. We can discuss it. But that's it. I just wanted you to know that that is the case today.
Perhaps update the resolution and allow 5 people.
So the request is to update the resolution. So we'll take that under advisement. I'm not going to say yes or no right now, but the Water Advisory Committee, I do want to apologize. We were going to meet at the end of this month. One of the things we were going to talk about was investment in the water treatment plant and so forth. And we had a lot of detailed PWA presentations, et cetera, but we just were not able to find a time that worked for everyone because of vacation schedule. So we're pushing that we're trying to do it in August. And so we'll be posting that soon. And we will address a number of these things. But I think Paula was saying the hookup to Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District is a potential future agenda item. So we'll put that on the list of something that we may discuss. I think the council would have to weigh in on that.
Well, I know when the decision was made previously, it stated that it would not be reconsidered for 3 years.
Okay. It's been 2 years now, right?
It's either 2 years or close to 2 years.
Yeah. So we'll take a look. So there is going to be a delay. Paula, if you want to add something really quick, I need to get to the last comment here.
I just want to clarify because I think Eli misunderstood me. I think there needs to be preparatory work before Humboldt Bay comes on the agenda to avoid the confrontational politics that happened 2 years ago.
Yeah, your point's well taken. Thank you.
The other point, there are 5 members to the there's 2 council members, 1 planning commissioner, and the 2 public representatives.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually 3. No, sorry, 2.
Yeah.
Bryce and Dwight.
Right.
Yeah. So we do have 5.
Yeah.
We would have to add a 6th if we.
No, I'm just saying that, I mean, she was thinking that maybe it was 4 to make it 5, but it is 5.
Yeah, 5's typically a pretty good number, but all right. Aaron, did you have a comment?
Initially I was just clapping at Steve's request for the traffic calming and some other things, but I do have one now that cropped up.
I think Steve also said it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that was Steve? Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was applauding, but it looked like a hand there, a Zoom trick I learned recently. But I was going to suggest, after participating in this meeting virtually tonight and having listened to some recent recordings, we do really need to, as a government, bolster our audio video thing. So getting that back on the agenda, it's important enough to me, sitting on the planning commission, trying to review things in preparation for minutes and meetings and whatnot, that I'll volunteer my time to do the legwork on this project so that it doesn't become another burden for staff. I just need to know, is Gabe the right person for me to reach out to understand the starting metrics that need to be met to have a system for the city? And then I'm happy to come back to council with a presentation and some options. It's that important to me. And it's hard for me to participate in government remotely, and hard for me to participate as a planning commissioner with the system we have in place through no fault of the hard work that's been there, but put into it. It just, we got to get this going better. And I'm happy to do the legwork again, because I know staff is pretty maxed already, and I don't want to just add more things to their plate. So thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm sorry, I got you guys. So Aaron, did you want the underground utilities? Because I thought for sure you were going to say something about that. That was the one that Councilor.
Well, I thought Jack had mentioned that. I didn't think, since Councilman Tuttle mentioned it, that I needed to bring it up as well. And he was breaking up. His audio was legitimately breaking up during that, so I couldn't hear exactly what he said.
Okay, I just want to make sure I got everybody's input on that, since I got up at 4:30 with the aforementioned 3-month-old puppy. It's hard for me to remember things right now. All right, thank you. And anything else? Otherwise, I think, Becky had a comment for a future topic.
So I would like to put a placeholder on the August agenda, if possible, for the stormwater project. There's potentially two pieces that we would want council to weigh in on, where the grant is closing up in February of next year. And we have two possible requests to council that we would like approval for moving forward.
Okay.
And and if we'll let you know if it's not right timing.
Okay. No, I think that sounds like it could be a good one to get through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Becky, is this an existing grant where there's leftover money, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's the stormwater project, which has been building all the underground facilities. Steve briefly mentioned there's a stormwater pipe on Van Wyck Trail that's kind of iffy.
Yeah.
And so the grant manager said he would consider a proposal to fund supporting that stormwater drain if we put some water treatment at one end or the other. So we're trying to work it through, getting input from the Rancheria and Shore Ancestral Society, and then we can kind of, like, once we get all people's kind of, that sounds like a good idea, then we will come to council. And
I was just trying to wrap my head around
the other piece is there's a rainwater catchment system that got approved. We're putting a system at the school.
Right.
And if there's extra capacity that the school does not need, I would like the council to think about a couple locations, or we'll probably propose a couple locations that additional storage as a demonstration system could be located.
Got it. Okay.
So
that's a great idea. And I think Trevor, we can talk about this more when we agendize it, but Trevor may have some input about that, because at one time on the planning commission, we also talked about building out little blueprints. So pre-approved plans that people could use, like kind of mama bear, papa bear, baby bear sized, water.
that was in our request for GHD.
Oh, okay.
To assist with that. There was something else you mentioned that we'll give you more information.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I think with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.